The format of this meeting is that on alternate weeks there's a step reading or a step share. This week is a step 10 share meeting, and Skip has very kindly come to share his experience, strength and hope on the step for approximately 20 minutes, but however long you feel comfortable. And with that, I'll turn the meeting over to Skip.
Thanks, Linz. My name's Skip. I'm a recovering alcoholic and addict.
Hi, Skip.
And it's a pleasure to be here. It really is. And I thank you, Lindsay, for inviting me. Lindsay and Frankie are people that I wouldn't say are like key in my recovery in terms of our lives, but I have kind of, our paths have crossed throughout the past 10 years, really. And they've always, both of them have been inspiration to me. So I felt quite privileged. It's my 10th birthday as I sit here by the grace of God. However, any of you choose to understand him, her, or it. And we've got a very broad brief on that. And that's the reason is because although we're going to get to step 10 and me, hopefully, my primary purpose here is to help at least one person in this room. Not that I have anything great to give out or I'm God or something, but that's my primary purpose because we're here to achieve this recovery from active addiction and to help each other do that. And I knew I couldn't do it alone. So my point is about one of the biggest arguments, a way to start an argument around the dinner table, as they say, is avoid conversations about, religion, politics, and sports? Yeah. So, this is why we have such a broad brief. God as you understand him, her, or it, But the spiritual part of our program is a must. And I found that myself, this step 10. For me, it's kept it online. It's a way I have. And although you don't find God mentioned in that step, it is very much an important step for me. If I tell you a little bit about myself in terms of strength, experience, and hope, for what it's worth, such as I have to give. I was born in 1951 in Palm Beach, Florida, so my probably cultural upbringing, etc., is a little different from yours. But I have lived here in London for 20 years, so in a way, there must be some affinity. I'm a bit of a Londoner, by transplantation these days anyhow. But the world I grew up in was kind of a privileged world. I wasn't a spoiled kid, but it's a bit of a fancy place down there in Palm Beach, and it's not geared to kids. It's not geared to your normal family development. I mean, whether you grew up on a council estate or in some, big country house out in Surrey or Gloucestershire or some, castle or mansion up in the north part of England, wherever you live, you find this disease, and I found it in my family. My first introduction to this disease was in my family of origin, and it was my mom and dad. They were alcoholics, practicing alcoholics, and I think if you're anything like me, probably everyone in this room can identify with that. Maybe some not. But I used to remember kind of a funny feeling on weekends. Friday would come around. This is when I was about 3-4 years old, and my mood would kind of drop. This kind of sadness and despair would come over me. Now, for years and years, I couldn't put my finger on what that was about. But later on, with the tools of this program, looking at myself, which is mainly getting back to step 10 and what this program is about, is a great degree of it, aside from our primary purpose, which is to stay clean and help others achieve recovery, a lot of it is about self-awareness. That's a real key to things. All these acceptance, surrender, all these things are like spokes on a wheel, and the main hub of that wheel is self-awareness, and furthermore, accurate self-awareness, because a lot of people can claim self-awareness. I can claim self-awareness, or awareness in general, but my awareness can also be very distorted by my moods, by things that are in my life that I can't control, as we call it, people, places, and things. So to get back to step 10, step 10, as it says in the book, I go to this book a lot because it says on the back, it's very interesting, many books have been written about the nature of addiction. This book primarily concerns itself with the nature of recovery. If you are an addict and have found this book, please give yourself a break and read it. So primarily concerns itself with the nature of recovery, and recovery is what I'm interested in. I like to read it because it gives me a gold standard, but the book isn't enough because the book won't work without the people in the room. I tried that once in my life. So growing up in this alcoholic family, with this kind of mood descending on me every weekend, and then later on, years later, with the Professor hindsight being 20/20 and the help of a lot of step work, I figured out what that was about. And basically, because every weekend my parents would get drunk and they would fight. And that would be, what is it? We're talking like 48, getting on 72 hours of nonstop chaos. So I also fell into that other loop, that other kind of half of our disease that we don't talk about in our predecessors or a mother fellowship or the other fellowship, as we say. They call that's the Al-Anon part of the program. We might call it caretaking or codependency. There's a billion names for it. Dysfunctional confluence is another real fancy one. But it's the part of the disease I was left with once I got clean, and I couldn't find out what it was that was tormenting me. And I was doing these steps, and I thought I was working the program. I had a good sponsor. I didn't ask him. He got me because he knew I was a person who wouldn't ask for help. And that's a comical thing there. I was blessed with this little black fellow. I'll never forget him, Ed Royal. He had been a chief executive, a CEO with what I call Nestle's. You say Nestle over here, I think, but Nestle's Corporation, a chocolate basically a big chocolate and drinks factory up in New Jersey, and he'd been a CEO up there and drank himself out of the position and back into the disease and into a rehab center down in Daytona Beach, Florida. And he said to the lady that ran the therapy group one day in a bad mood, she said, well, what are you doing here, Ed? And he said, well, lady, I'm here because I'm going to have your job. And he went into the industry, as I call it, a recovery, and wound up sponsoring me. And I learned so much from that man. I don't know if he's still alive today, but my hat goes off to him. And I just so wish I had listened more, like my own dad, listened more to what he had to say, because I could have saved myself a lot of pain. A lot of this is talked about in our step 10 here. It's a very brief step. A lot of these steps are long, but step 10 is amazingly brief, just a couple of pages, but it is such a crucial step, because once I've gone through this process of getting clean, and then how many of us have kicked how many times? We can't do the multiples of that in this room. It would be a staggering number. If we had £1 for each time somebody kicked in this room, and we'd still split the money and be rich on top of that, I'm sure. And so the trick then became staying clean, how to do that. The program offers that way. Once that's mastered, you're left with a lot of stuff that you didn't have. You either screened it with drugs or that big package we call feelings, which is highly involved with people, places, and things. Stuff I can't control. That, like, for example, if I'd started out this chair, and I always think when I finish this chair, I'll think of everything I ought to have said and do that little trip. Anyone who's done a chair knows that. I couldn't have sat down and said, well, I feel nervous, because I didn't feel nervous. What I actually fell off was pissed off. I'm pissed off because I've lost a gray scarf that was a birthday present last night. And then I'm pissed off again because the people above me have a bunch of bouncy kids, and every weekend, it's like cannonballs raining on the roof. And so that's me. I wake up Sunday morning and I'm kind of shaky and pissed off. Well, that's set up. What would I used to do? What I used to do is reach under my bed, get out little, syringe and some morphine in a bottle wrapped nicely the night before when I fell on my face, in a little towel, and I'd give myself a shot, and all those cares would go away. But in my new way of life, that's not possible, because the primary bottom line, as they say across the water, is to stay clean. We got to get clean first. That's the first step. And I have sponsees that come to me. I notice I'm quick here, so I'm trying to say a lot in these few minutes. Maybe bear with me. People will say, you said so much, but let's do it. Do the Tibetan Lama theory. I'm going to throw a lot of stuff against the wall. Whatever sticks is what you need, so don't worry about what you didn't hear or what you missed. The deal is, if I get rid of these drugs and this compulsion to use is eventually lifted, I still have these feelings that I've got to deal with, and this reality, my first contact with the reality, and it's a very distorted one. And I remember it the first time I came through it. Through the grace of God, my dad sent me into treatment because he was sick of me being on the methadone program and pretending I was having a life, pretending I was going to school, pretending I was in a rock and roll band, and watching me study with one eye open reading the same paragraph 14 times. That was studying. That's the reality he was seeing. My reality was that, hey, I was doing fine. No, Dad, look, I'm putting in hours. But do you realize, Skip, that, I come into your room, you don't even know I'm in there, and you're reading the same page that I saw you reading an hour ago. Whereupon denial comes in. Oh, no, come on. Or then anger. Or then I just slam the door and walk out. This is what I don't want to look at, reality. So once you take away the chemicals, you got no choice. You got to look at the reality. And I said, sponsees come to me and they say, this program isn't keeping me clean. Well, that's cart before the horse, if I got British speak right, isn't it? Because what I found out is I had to stay clean. That was my commitment. That was my ante into the poker game. I had to become clean, to be willing to sacrifice that. And really, there's this magic phrase I always liked from step 6 of the green and gold. And it says, when the pain of remaining insane becomes greater than the fear of change, then we will let go. When the pain of remaining insane becomes greater than the fear of change, then we'll let go. That's how, we're like Rottweilers in that way. So once I make the sacrifice, here's how I look at it. God, of my understanding, is seeing me do that deal, and he's saying, okay, he's come a step towards me, I'll come some steps towards him. Hence, a lot of good stuff happens immediately. And the sponsees come to me and they say, but the program isn't keeping me clean. And I keep saying to them, no. Don't you understand? You got to get clean. That's your job. Once you're clean, which is inherently a very difficult thing for an addict to do, if you're anything like me, the program will help you stay clean. And that's the glitch that I couldn't overcome before, because I got clean 1,000,000 times, but I couldn't stay that way for more than a day, a week, a month. And before I had the program, I think my longest time was 1 white knuckle year, after which I collapsed. And that's how I wound up in a treatment center in Minnesota, and my first exposure to these 12 steps. And then me, at 27, waking up to reality, seeing that all my friends had either committed suicide or were very successful lawyers or movie stars and had nice wives and big houses. And here I was with the American equivalent of a black bin liner in a halfway house in a university town. I thought, better get your ass back in school and spin those wheels and burn rubber, So I pushed myself into that, equating achievements scholastically and academically as recovery. And I think that is what caused my relapse, because after 9 years of that, with a very codependent relationship with my sponsee, who later relapsed and hung herself, unfortunately, my dad dying, and me slipping and falling and breaking my back, I had the perfect setup: emotional pain, physical pain, and mental pain. And plus I was a practicing physician and an associate professor of medicine. I could write, working in cancer therapy, I could write my own ticket, and I did. And I wrote myself and at first it was quite grand. When I came to Britain, it was Harley Street, and it was nice room, Harrow on the Hill, the High Street, number 45. But after 9 years, inevitably, like the reading that Allie gave, young lady over there, the ends are always the same: jails, institutions, and death. And at the end of my line, I wound up in Feltham, in a house with lungs full of water on the point of death, because my body was full of so much morphine, my drug of choice, my little candy, that the heart wasn't pumping enough to move the blood around enough to keep me, from drowning in my own fluids. And I went into the emergency room, and that was the summer of '96. I had just been visited by my mom and brother, who also suffer from this disease, or did, and they have now passed beyond suffering. In fact, my whole family has. I'm the one remaining person who, by the grace of God, is still here amongst our small family of 4, and is in this program of recovery. This is a wonderful program. Now, When I came to terms with the fact that I'd lost everything, my position, my everything, and I was about to lose my life, I decided it was time to let go. So that's that equation I told you about. It was a step 6. Apparently the pain of being insane had become greater than the fear of change. So I let go, and the first way I let go was to let other people control my dosages, which was a very hard thing to do because I knew the perfect cocktail for my pain. They didn't quite understand. They needed long lectures in pharmacology and detailed neuropharmacology to help them understand. NHS professors to help them understand how these drugs actually work at the synapses and how pain is effectively dealt with. I mean, did they go to school or what? The thing is, I came to the point where I had to leave, let them handle my drugs, and it just, the higher power thing in here is that it was my 45th birthday, my physical 45th birthday. So I look at it this way. I was given the program in Minnesota. It was an AA program in Hazelden. NA wasn't that big. I don't know why they didn't give me NA. Maybe there just wasn't a lot of NA around. Now I hear in the States that it's huge. I've not been back since, so clearly I belong in London. I came over here initially because a writer friend of mine, now deceased, an old writer addict, said that, Dr. Featherston, I think the only city on this earth where you're going to survive in a civilized fashion with a habit like you've got would be the city of London, where you could go and do, in my words, the Harley Street thing. And I was headhunted by Glaxo, so I came over here. But I've already told you the end of my road is the end of my road. So if anyone's questioning, what would it be like if I had all the drugs I ever wanted? Well, the results are always the same. You may be different from me. You may be that 1 in a million girl or whatever. I don't know. But I kind of doubt that. I think the result will be you'll reach some point where you'll die. That's simple as that. And I didn't want to die. In fact, I was vociferously telling these doctors and nurses, really talking to God as I was kind of seeing star patterns and weird things in front of my face and really feeling like I was losing it on this stretcher. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. And they kept saying, look, you're going to live. You're going to live. But they didn't understand I was talking to God, who I hoped was listening, and I suppose he did, because as it worked out, on my 45th birthday, I got into a detox unit, and the door slammed. It was a locked ward. It was called Max Glad, and I got clean. But when I came out of that place, I kept telling myself, this kind of little lie, as we do. Anyone in here maybe occasionally find themselves lying to themselves like I do. But the lie was that you're in here and it's day 1, but when you finish 30 days, you're going to come out feeling chipper, as the British say. Well, that was a lie. I'll tell you, I felt worse than when I went in. And that was just the fact that it left me with this one big word suddenly had a whole lot of significance: recovery. I had many things to get back, like my sanity, my ability to write my name, to hear a whole sentence, to give a coherent answer, simple things like that, dress myself in the morning. I knew I needed treatment, and funnily enough, that year my prayer to God for Christmas was, please, Lord, get me into treatment somewhere, 12 steps somewhere. A door opened up at a place called Clouds. I'm not touting that as a treatment center. I went into there, and I kept telling myself the same lie. Well, 6 more weeks here, and eventually I came to terms with my focal therapist. He used to get a kick out of me using that word. My counselor, now dead, very, very lovely guy. He said, Skip, the thing is, what you don't understand is what you've lost. What you were a person who got away scot-free, literally. And now you've experienced the yets. You've experienced almost all of those yets. So that's the part of my program that I hadn't experienced yet. And having that under my belt, I decided suddenly there was this raging forest fire in my head, and all my reservations burned away like that. I mean, actually like that, because I was seriously scared about my life, and most of it was gone. At 45, what the hell? I mean, I woke up in a lifestyle where I thought I would be 17 forever. I never gave it much thought beyond that. We get older and we change. So coming out of that long process of recovery, I came to these rooms. My first introduction to NA as such was in Britain. I've never been to a meeting in the States, so I thank very much. I have to thank the British public. I have to thank the people of NA, the people of England, the people of the UK for very graciously giving me this chance to live. I had no insurance, no money like I'd need in my country to get myself into treatment. It was given to me, so it was a real gift. And I am eternally grateful for that. These days, when I know a little bit more about myself, when I start to get cranky and needy and greedy and grabby, I just think back and think of what I've been given, just given. That's charity, that's grace, stuff I never deserved. It's been given to me. I need to use it well. The key that will help me do that is the gratitude. Now, so after I've talked to you through this brief story about me, so we've heard about 9 years of recovery, about 10 years of relapse, and here's 10 years of recovery again. And it wasn't easy to live with the fact that a lot of the stuff that I lost, I wasn't going to get back. And I'm in a position now where I face some pretty heavy surgery. It's right around the corner, and well, I'm scared about it, really. I'm not scared as I sit here talking to you. I find this remarkably encouraging. Your support, that's the physical, mental, and spiritual parts of this program working. I feel very at ease. But when the day comes, I'll be shit scared, but I'll get through it. And maybe, by God's grace, I'll live. But it's going to be a piece of work to get through. And it's probably going to be after Christmas. They're going to open me up once, put some metal in, hopefully no infections, clean out the infection that's there. If it's not, a lot of ifs here. Let me sit for a while, then open me up again and hopefully put in more implants, and then I'll be good to go. That's a big plate for me. But look, there are other people who walk into a GP's appointment thinking nothing, and the doctor says, hey, I'm sorry to tell you, but you've got an incurable brain tumor. So that there's a contrast there. There's a gratitude. What all helps me do that? How do I keep that in balance? We read, just to read a line or two, when we hear about our step 4, it says, the purpose of the searching and fearless moral inventory. I take it everyone knows step 4. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. A lot of people I know work very hard at this. It's the big turning point of their recovery. That's their report back to me, and it makes a difference. The purpose of this searching and fearless moral inventory is to sort through the confusion and the contradiction of our lives so that we can find out who we really are. We are starting a new way of life, and we need to be rid of the burdens and traps that controlled us and prevented our growth. As we approach this step, most of us are afraid that there is a monster inside of us that, if released, will destroy us. This fear can put us off. But we have found that fear is a lack of faith. We have found that a loving, personal God to whom we can turn will help us to no longer be afraid. That's very important. And the spiritual paths are many. I don't want to confuse spirituality with religion here, because to me, if it's not practical, it's not spiritual. But each person has the abundant liberty in this country, which is a God, that's another God-given right to be thankful for. You can explore many religions. You can explore, if you want to push your spirituality into religious discipline, you can explore Islam, Hinduism, Zen, Buddhism, atheism, creative atheism, altruistic, enlightened self-interest, what you like. It's on offer in this big city. So that's up to each and every individual to open that door when they feel they're ready for it. After we do step 4, we do step 5. Now it tells us step 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and the other human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. It doesn't say our wrongs as a categorical shopping list of what we did wrong. It's the exact nature of our wrongs, and that's a big key. And if you don't tell the secret out, it's worthless. But all of you will learn that. I hear it. The people that some know it already. I always hear the same answer. It tells me that person has got the key when they've done that step. And it's something about how this disease works. So I leave that for each of you to find out. Some of you know it, some of you don't. It's a very exciting part of the program to me. It turns it around. The 5th step is a key to freedom. It allows us to live clean in the present. Sharing the exact nature of our wrongs sets us free to live. So once again, we're left with, now this is a big undertaking, all this writing. We've got to have something that works for us more immediately, on a more immediate basis, a day-to-day kind of nature. And that thing is step 10. And it's like, to me, it's like very much like a capsulized, condensed, consolidated essence of steps 4 and 5. And it's very much about awareness. And as it says, we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. For me, the key is about knowing when I'm wrong, because there's those two things that the addict doesn't like. And one is hearing the word no, and the other is being wrong. Like in the other fellowship, they often say, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? There's these phrases, which are kind of funny little slogans, but I used to hate them all, but now I like them. They help me. They help me memorize a chapter of material down into one core sentence with a little punch. So I find them. I can smile at that now, but I can't tell you how much I hated those slogans for how long. There's a big resentment. But step 10 frees us from the wreckage of our past, so it says. And through the mechanism of this step, the promise is this step allows us to be ourselves. We no longer justify our existence. We don't have to, do that continual act. And step then 10 demands of us a couple things, demands of me. If I practice it, it tells me this thing about continue to take the personal inventory. It doesn't say how often. It says when I was wrong, promptly admitted it. It doesn't say how I'm going to know I'm wrong, and it doesn't say like promptly, well, that's pretty quick, right then and there. So there's some room for growth there. I've got to learn. As it says, we're creatures of habit and are vulnerable to our old ways of thinking and reacting. But it's also very important because it says if we do not stay aware of our defects, they can drive us into a corner that we cannot get out of clean. And having been through one horrendous relapse, I can tell you, I don't want another. I don't want another. Please, God, because I won't survive it. It's going to be a miserable death. I know that. And so I have a great fear. Maybe as I've chatted to Lindsay about this recently, my fear is probably disproportionate, but maybe it's healthy for now. That's the fear that keeps me clean. Perhaps my whole program is askew, isn't the right way. But that's the one thing that keeps me clean is the great fear of that death. Like it says, no addict needs to die alone and inactive addiction anymore. And I had enough of a taste of that I just don't want to go that way. So the thing about the step 10 is you could do it many ways. For me, the key of it is self-awareness. And self-awareness is a difficult thing to acquire. I find that's a very spiritual practice, and it starts by we take a look at ourselves. We also, you have to employ this how, H-O-W, honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. That's my ability to let in something that you tell me. Hey, Skip, you're kind of ratty today. Now, normally, I'd either blow up or, fuck you, or just get a resentment. Or if I needed something from you, I'd ignore it and people please you, passive-aggressive, do the thing, around the backside of the bush, all that crap. But to honestly be able to hear you and say, well, this man is trying to help me, this woman is trying to help me, not hurt me, and listen to what you say, even though if you praise me, I'll be all smiles and I'll be your friend, but you say one bad thing and the horns come out, My ability to listen to what you tell me, even if it's what I don't like to hear, is a big meter of growth. It's a big gold standard of growth, And sometimes the feedback is hard. People give it in different ways. Some people give it very diplomatically, very nicely. Some people just tell you how it is. But the important thing is for me to be able to hear that. Through that process, as it grows within me, I learn to know when I'm wrong. And normally I would know when I'm wrong because I'd close up into a resentful mess or throw a fit or get back at you or something like that. But now my knowledge of my wrongness, it really isn't being wrong so much as having made a mistake. That needs to be tied into this being able to admit it, pretty quick. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. I learned it by being able to say I'm sorry. Well, I'm wrong, I'm sorry. And that was a hard thing for me. I learned it in secondary by doing it a lot because of a culture class. Each person, that road might be different. It says in the basic text that you may write about it. You might do yourself a set of mini steps. You might do morning papers. A lot of people do morning pages. They write a little. Or they lie in bed at night. I do the two just closing up here now, I do the two-way thing, the AM-PM system, I call it. It's what I was taught by my sponsor. None of this is the wisdom of Skip, please believe me. All this stuff is what was handed to me. It's a lineage. It's just like the lamas, the way lamas, yogis, holy men, guild, you name it. Any secret society which we have here that has power and has magic in it and is a wonderful way forwards and a window to incredible things has this incredible magical drive to it. And what exists in NA is our ability to open up the spiritual side of our life on the practical level. So I get this clarity, this ability to say, hey, I'm wrong, promptly admit it and just let it go. My tendency normally, I found myself when I was learning this, I'd want to explain to you about it. And that's what it says the ticket is. Don't do that. Don't justify it. It's not an excuse. The reason doesn't count. It's the ability to just say, well, I'm wrong. I'm sorry. I did you wrong. And still, some days it isn't easy for me. Now, I know on that day that my CDs are high. My character defects are high. I'm more in the disease than in the recovery, despite my clean time. That means a lot, but it also means a little. Certain parts of today, I'll feel like day one again. But the point is to be able to put my hands up, say, I'm sorry, make an amend to you, then we get around to making the amends. That's a different story, different step, not what I was asked to talk to you about. So I see it's a big meeting. I've gone on long enough, I feel. I know there's so much more to say, but I can't say everything, even though I'd like to tell you all about how it works. So I think I'll shut up and listen to you. But thank you all for listening, for your patience, and for being part of my recovery.